my name is Francesca Vallejo, and this is my PowerPoint presentation on juvenile delinquency and the influential factors that contribute to the development of deviant behavior. Alright, so as we begin, I'm going to introduce the research topic. So the first thing is the research question. What are the factors that can influence an individual to exhibit delinquent behavior? This topic of study is focused on the influential factors that play a significant role in influencing the development of delinquent behavior, specifically in juveniles. So now for the importance of the research topic. The reason for why this research topic was chosen was because I believe that it is important to examine and identify the influential factors within an individual's life that can cause them to develop delinquent behavior. I also find this research topic extremely interesting to study because I strongly believe that behind every behavior committed by an individual, there is reasoning and influences behind the behavior, whether it is good or bad. In addition, I have also always been fascinated in learning about why people act the way they do and all of the various factors that influence their behavior. This research topic greatly contributes to the population that is being studied, which is juvenile delinquents. Even though this research topic is focused more on juvenile delinquents, this topic can also be related to the adult population. The significance that the contribution of this research topic has on its population is that by looking at the possible factors, for example, mental health, environment, and social influences that could be contributing to the delinquent behavior that these adolescents are exhibiting, can aid us in gaining further insight into the reasoning behind and development of deviant behavior. Alright, so let's dive into the literature review. Reports of delinquent acts being committed by juveniles are constantly being shown to the public through various news and social media outlets. Some examples of the delinquent behavior that these juvenile delinquents are engaging in are substance abuse, academic failure, and committing crimes. Not only does this problematic behavior bring forth additional problems in society, but it also sparks a major concern for the delinquents' mental health and well-being. There are many diverse factors that could be contributing to the development of delinquent behavior in these adolescents. In this study, a variety of journal articles on this research topic will be reviewed and analyzed to determine the common themes relating to the factors contributing to juvenile delinquency. Alright, so the first factor that we'll be focusing on in this literature review is mental illness. Having a mental illness can seriously impact and influence the way one thinks and behaves. In regards to juvenile delinquents, it is of great importance to be able to determine whether having a mental illness is an influential factor that is contributing to their delinquent behavior. Brooke, Clauser, Stams, Slott, and Dora Lazers conducted a study to gain more valuable information on the psychopathology of juvenile delinquents. This study consisted of 33 juvenile delinquents who have been diagnosed with behavioral and psychiatric disorders. The participants were asked to fill out a self-report questionnaire regarding the psychopathology and parent-child relationship of the participants. The results from the study revealed that the parents of the juvenile delinquents rated their children higher on the psychopathology and direct aggression report in comparison to the scores of the adolescents from the general population. In a similar study that was conducted, Grisso hypothesized and found that in the juvenile delinquents, there was a strong correlation between mental illness and the increase in their aggression and delinquent behavior. It was also stated by Grisso that there have been numerous studies conducted that have reported that mental illnesses are common among adolescents who have been arrested for committing delinquent acts. After reviewing these articles, it is apparent that having a mental illness is what may be contributing to the delinquent behavior in these adolescents. Alright, so the second factors that we will be reviewing is the environmental factors. Another influential factor that can be contributing to the development of problematic behavior in adolescents is their environment. In the research study conducted by Lowe, Sinclair, and Short, their goal was to determine whether economic strain within a family can have a damaging effect on adolescents, causing them to develop delinquent behavior. Lowe et al. Hypothesized that familial economic conditions play a huge role in influencing the development of juvenile delinquency. The sample of this study consisted of 244 families where the mother of each family was asked to fill out a questionnaire that asked questions concerning the behavior of their children and the economic status of their family. The results from this study revealed that adolescent delinquency was more prevalent in economically strained families and that the economic conditions of a household can greatly influence the development of delinquent behavior within a child. In comparison to the studies regarding the influence of mental illness on juvenile delinquency, the environment that an adolescent is in can greatly influence their development of delinquent behavior. Now, the third factor that we will be reviewing are the social factors. In a research study conducted by Duncan et al., their main focus was to determine the specific risk and protective factors that influence delinquent behavior. Duncan et al. Believed that the social influences, for example, peer, school, and community, can influence a vast range of problematic behavior within these adolescents. There was a total of 1,725 adolescents who participated in this study, and they were asked questions regarding their demographics, behaviors, and social influences. The findings of the study revealed that an adolescent's friends, family, and the types of social activities they are engaged in all have a significant effect on their behavior. These findings also revealed that the adolescents who had friends who exhibited deviant behavior greatly influenced the adolescents to develop more problematic behavior. In a similar study conducted by Sharma, and Barkataki, their focus was to determine the impact that family and social factors have on a juvenile delinquent. Sharma et al. Hypothesized that the children who are raised in a stable, supportive, and affectionate household are less at risk of developing delinquent behavior. This study consisted of a face-to-face interview with 487 juvenile delinquents that were asked questions regarding their family structure, behavior conditions, and drug use. The results revealed that the family and social factors are significant predictors of delinquent behavior and drug abuse. Therefore, negative family conditions and having delinquent peers are two of the most influential social factors that significantly contribute to an adolescent developing delinquent behavior. So now for the research method. I ended up choosing the survey research method to further investigate my research question and to obtain more insight regarding the possible influences that causes an individual to engage in deviant behavior. So the survey research method. Why was it chosen? By choosing the survey research method, this method allows me to easily gain more information about the research question. Not only is the survey research method one of the most widely used methods in various research studies, but it also makes it easier for the researcher to collect data from a large population who answer questions regarding human behavior, culture, beliefs, etc. Once the data is collected from the survey, the researcher now has the opportunity to study and analyze all of the data, which will supply them with more information and gain a deeper insight into the topic of study. With that said, choosing the survey research method was the best method to use to gather information regarding the influential factors that are associated with those who commit deviant behavior. In addition, by creating the survey, I was able to publish it onto different social media outlets, which allows me to gain more people of all ages to participate in my study. The more people I can get to participate in my study, the more data I have to analyze and draw important conclusions from. So how is it a good fit for the research question? This research method was a great fit for the research question because it allowed me to ask important questions relating to deviant behavior. In addition to that, I was also able to ask demographic questions, for example, age, sex, ethnicity, and living environment, that provides me with more insight about the background information of those who are participating in my survey. The questions within my survey can allow me to determine what kind of factors are similar within the participants who have engaged in deviant behavior. So here's a breakdown of the questions I included in my survey. For question number 1, I asked, what is your gender? The answer choices were male, female, other, or prefer not to answer. For question 2, what is your age? The answer choices were under 12, between the ages of 12 to 17, 18 to 24, 25 to 34, 35 to 44, or 45 or older. For question 3, it was please specify your ethnicity. So these answer choices consisted of white or Caucasian, Hispanic or Latino, American Indian or Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, Asian or Asian American, Black or African American, or another race. For question 4, it was what was your family's economic condition while you were growing up? So the choices were upper class, upper middle class, lower middle class, lower class, or not short. Number 5 was which of these choices best describes the type of home you were raised in? So the answers were foster home, single parent home, raised by your grandparents, raised by a sibling, raised with both parents, or other. Question 6 was, have you participated in any of these acts? So these acts consisted of deviant acts. So the answer choices were theft, assault, gang involvement, weapon use, drug use, underage alcohol consumption, driving while intoxicated, and cheating. Question number 6 was, if you selected any of these acts previously mentioned, did you ever think it was wrong or felt guilty when you committed these acts? The choices were yes, no, not sure, or not available. Question number 8 was, what was your personal reasoning for committing these acts? So this was a free response question, so the participants were able to freely state why they committed these acts, or their reasoning. Question number 9 was, for someone who has committed a deviant act, and I also included a brief definition of the deviant act, so it's an act that would be considered to be illegal or unacceptable by society. What are some possible factors in your opinion as to why they commit these deviant acts? This was also a free response question because I wanted to see what the participants truly believe in why someone commits a deviant act. Alright, so I have 3 hypotheses of how my survey results are going to end up. So for hypothesis number 1, I believe that the majority of the participants who have engaged in deviant behavior will report that they were raised in a single-parent home. The reason for this hypothesis is because I believe that being raised in a single-parent home can cause these families to face more challenges than someone who is raised with 2 parents. Some of these challenges can consist of financial problems, lack of attention from parent, and poor economic conditions. Thus, these challenges can influence an individual living in this environment to develop deviant behavior. Hypothesis number 2, I also believe that the majority of the participants who have committed deviant acts will report that their family's economic social class was of the lower class. The reason for this hypothesis is because I believe that someone who comes from the lower class faces more economic hardships than those from the higher social classes. Having to face these kinds of hardships can influence someone to engage in deviant behavior. My last hypothesis, number 3, lastly, I believe that the deviant act that will be most selected from the participants is underage alcohol consumption. The reason as to why I believe that underage alcohol consumption will be the most selected answer is because I know a lot of people who have engaged in underage alcohol consumption for various reasons. Some of these reasons could be because of social influences, trying to escape from their emotional and life problems, and or just out of curiosity. While conducting this research study, there were some problems that arose that brought forth limitations in my research. There was a total of 2 problems that I faced. So the first problem was sample size. Since I posted my survey on different social media outlets, for example, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, I expected to have a large number of participants. The problem that I ended up facing with was that I only had 20 participants who chose to complete my survey. Even though I did not have a large sample size, I still believe that I was able to gain some valuable information about the participants who have committed deviant acts, the factors that influence this behavior, and their opinions as to why people engage in deviant behavior. Problem number 2 was an absence of mental illness-related questions. Another problem I faced was choosing whether to ask questions regarding the participants' mental health. Even though I believe that mental illness is an influential factor that can cause an individual to engage in deviant behavior, I felt that it was too much of a personal question to include in my survey. Including this question could cause the participant to feel hesitation or bring forth emotional distress while answering questions regarding their mental health. For that reason, I allowed a free response question at the end of my survey that allows the participant to freely state their opinions on what kind of factors, for example, environmental, social, and mental illness, can influence someone to engage in deviant behavior. So now for the results. For question 1, 78.95% of the respondents were female and 21.05% were male. Question 2, 5.26% of the respondents were between the ages of 12 to 17, 21.58% were between the ages of 18 and 24, 47.37% were between the ages of 25 and 34, and 15.79% were 45 years or older. For question 3, 31.58% of the respondents were white or Caucasian, 52.63% were Hispanic, 15.79% were Black or African American. For question number 4, 10.53% of the respondents were from the upper middle class, 21.05% were from the middle class, 26.32% were from the lower middle class, and 42.11% were from the lower class. Question number 5. 5.26% of the respondents were raised in a foster home, 36.84% were raised in a single-parent home, 5.26% were raised by a sibling, and 52.63% were raised with both parents. Question number 6. 5 of the respondents have committed theft, 9 respondents selected drug use, 12 respondents selected underage alcohol consumption, 8 respondents selected that they have driven while intoxicated, 5 respondents selected that they have cheated, 4 respondents selected that they did not engage in any of these deviant activities. Question number 6. 68.42% selected that they felt it was wrong and felt guilty when they committed deviant acts. 10.53% selected that they did not feel it was wrong or guilty, and 15.79% selected not available. Question number 8 and 9 will be further discussed in the analysis section. Alright, so let's get into the analysis. After examining the results from my study, there were important things I gathered from the results and from the final 2 free response questions, where the respondents were asked, what was your personal reasoning for committing these acts of deviance? And in your opinion, what are some factors that can influence an individual to commit deviant acts? An important finding to take into consideration was that the majority of the respondents were between the ages of 25 to 34 years old, and a little more than half the participants were of Hispanic or Latino descent. One of the most surprising things that I found in the results was that the majority of the participants' economic condition while growing up was from the lower class. This supports my hypothesis that the majority of the participants who have committed deviant acts would come from a lower class family. Another thing that surprised me was that the majority of the participants were raised with both parents. I found that to be quite interesting because one of my hypotheses was that the majority of the participants were going to select being raised in a single parent home. Further future studies should be conducted to examine whether there is a correlation between living environment, for example, being raised by a single parent, raised with both parents, contributes to the development of deviant behavior. It was also interesting to find that most of the participants selected that they have engaged in underage alcohol consumption. This supports my final hypothesis that the majority of the participants will select alcohol consumption. Even though this was the highest selected answer, it is also important to take notice that drug use and driving while intoxicated were also answers that was selected by a lot of the participants. Another interesting finding was that 68% of the participants answered that they knew this type of deviant behavior was wrong and that they felt guilty once they committed these acts. It is interesting to see that people acknowledge that what they are doing is wrong and feel a sense of remorse for engaging in these types of deviant activities. So now to get back to the analysis of question number 8. So this question was a free response question where the participants had an opportunity to state their reasoning for committing these deviant acts. This is where I was able to gain very important information as to why people engage in this sort of behavior. I found that the majority of the responses stated that it was because of peer pressure and that they did it just for fun. There were responses that also mentioned that it was because of that is how they coped with their pain, anxiety, and depression. It was very interesting and informative to review these responses because each of these responses fell under the 3 influential factors that I mentioned in the literature review that can cause an individual to engage in deviant behavior. Now for the analysis of question number 9. So this free response question also provided me with vital and informative information regarding the influential factors that can cause an individual to develop deviant behavior. It was very interesting to read the responses that the participants provided. The majority of the participants talked about how they believe that the reason for individuals engaging in deviant behavior is either because of peer pressure, because they were young and did not care, a dysfunctional family life, or trying to cope with life stressors. By far, my favorite response that gave me another outlook as to why people commit these acts was the respondent who stated, "Some people do it to fulfill the desire to be alive or rebellious. Sometimes they do it to feel complete. Maybe that person wants to stand out and express that they just don't care. Maybe that person feels abandoned and is trying to find the thing that comforts them in some toxic way." Reading that response made me realize that there are other influential factors out there besides mental illness, environmental and social factors that can influence an individual to engage in deviant behavior. All in all, These findings provided me with more information regarding this topic on deviant behavior. I was able to see what commonalities each of these participants have with one another that can be influencing their deviant behavior. This type of behavior stems from somewhere deeper within an individual, and there are numerous factors that can be contributing to this problematic behavior. In addition, all of this can begin to take form in one's childhood years and be influenced by their living environment, family economic conditions, and social influences. These influential factors can influence someone to develop deviant behaviors beginning in their adolescent years and all the way into their adulthood years. So now we're going to see how this applies to sociology. From the sociological perspective, deviance is a collection of conditions, acts, or behaviors that departs from the social norm and that society finds offensive, disvalues, or even condemns. In this survey that I conducted, I made sure to include a number of deviant acts that the participants could select if they have ever committed any of those acts. By doing so, I have the opportunity to evaluate the most common deviant acts that these participants have committed at any point of their life. In addition, the research findings revealed to me that a lot of people have engaged in acts that society disapproves of. For example, underage alcohol consumption, driving while intoxicated, and theft, which falls under the sociological definition of deviance. The research findings also reveal that a lot of the participants answered that peer pressure was an influential factor in exhibiting deviant behavior. Being peer pressured into committing acts that are classified as deviant relates greatly with the sociological theory known as the socialization or learning theory. The socialization or learning theory is based on how someone can learn to be deviant within subcultures and among peers who exhibit deviant norms and values. This theory supports the reasoning behind why the respondents felt peer pressured to commit these acts and that they wanted to fit in with their friends who are engaging in deviant behavior. In a way, they were learning this type of behavior through their peers, which influenced them to participate in acts of deviance. Another sociological theory of deviance, known as the individualistic theory, centers around the belief that there is a biological or psychological explanation for why deviance occurs. According to Clinard and Mayer, biologists believe that biologically inherited traits could be the reason for why individuals fall into alcoholism, drug addiction, and certain types of mental disorders. With that said, it is possible that these biologically inherited traits could be another factor that caused the respondents to partake in drug use, alcohol use, and those who reported to suffer with anxiety and depression. As stated by Clinard and Mayer, each human being embodies both a biological nature and a social nature. With that said, it is important to determine the biological, psychological, and sociological factors that can be influencing an individual to commit deviant behavior. Lastly, the anomie theory is another sociological theory that can be applied to my research findings. According to Clinard and Mayer, the anomie theory is centered around the idea that certain social, structural strains is what pressures an individual to become deviant. The research findings showed that the majority of the participants selected that they were raised in the lowest social class. Those who were raised in the lower class showed to have committed more deviant acts compared to those who were raised in a higher social class. The anomie theory makes it clear that those who are members of the lower class feel pressure to achieve certain goals in their lives or try to make ends meet through forms of deviance. So now we're going to see how the research findings and deviance applies to the Christian worldview. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. From the Christian worldview, deviant behavior would be considered a sin. In addition to deviant behavior being a sin, this type of behavior draws away from God's norm. The Bible shows us that God has a set of rules for us to follow and to stray away from committing acts of sin. Deviant acts such as theft, crime, and drug abuse all goes against the will of God and breaks His commandments. It is crucial from the biblical perspective that we refrain from engaging in acts of sin, in this case, deviant behavior, since it goes against God's law and can result in severe consequences. Even though sin is such a prevalent force that consumes the lives of many, God gives everyone an opportunity to confess their sins, be forgiven of those sins, and to be made new in Him. I have swept away your offenses like a cloud, your sins like the morning mist. Return to me, for I have redeemed you. Isaiah 44:22. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey to discover the influential factors of deviant behavior and juvenile delinquency. I provided a list of the references that I used throughout this PowerPoint presentation. Again, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed.